Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about measuring and adjusting front end play in a Ford C6. So we have a completed pump assembly here, along with 3 selective washers for the direct drum to stator thrust. So the middle washer is what came in this transmission originally, 72 thousandths of an inch thick, and then on either side of it are 2 thrust washers that came in as part of a TransStar thrust washer kit. This one's 57 thousandths thick and this one's 87 thousandths thick. Now, for whatever reason, the kits come with 2 of these black thrust washers, and they're both of the same thickness. I don't know if that's supposed to be the case. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, but you know, this particular kit, that's kind of how it came. Anyway, this pump, this thrust washer are all part of the same transmission that was featured in the teardown inspection video, the full-length one, not the quick one. And if you watched that video and you saw my initial end plate check, you saw that I was right at 43 or 44 thousandths of an inch, which is at the extreme upper end of what's considered tolerable from the factory. So the range you want to manage to is 8 to 44 thousandths in all these transmissions. Doesn't matter what variant or what it's going in behind or whatever. It's all 8 to 44 thousandths of an inch thick. And if you're going to be doing any kind of racing or high performance, my suggestion would be to try to keep to between 15 and 30 thou. I've had success with that in the past. I mean, obviously nothing that would lead me to believe that that's not a good range. And it's, again, right in the middle, not at one extreme or the other. So with Fords and with Chryslers, it's good to be kind of in the middle. With GM, if you're racing, you want to be on the tighter side of things when it comes to end play or gear train travel or whatever the case may be. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to stick the 72 thousandths of an inch thrust washer onto the pump. This is a number 2 washer. I'll put a chart on the screen that has all of the different thicknesses available. From the factory, they use both a color coding system and a numerical system for indicating thickness, and then in the aftermarket they just give you a few different options. And TransStar isn't the only place you can get different selective washers. I think that there's other places that make them as well or have them available. So if you need a kit or if you don't have spares, it's a good idea to pick up a kit before you start going back together with your transmission. All right. We'll bring you back when I have the dial indicator set up, the case fully assembled, and we'll go ahead and we'll take an in-play check. What I always do is I'll put the pump gasket, pump the case gasket on, no pump O-ring, just the pump the case gasket, and then I'll install 3 or 4 bolts. In this transmission there's no seals, but if there were seals I would leave them off of the bolts, and then I'll take an initial reading and see where I'm at. All right, we got the pump installed. I've installed all the pump to case bolts except for the 2 which I'm using for guide pins. So I'm using 25 foot-pounds, gasket in, no pump O-ring, no assembly lube, nothing like that. And incidentally, the guide pins are about 6 inches long. They're just simply M8 125 threaded bolts with the heads cut off. And that's really all you need. So what you want to do to make sure you have an accurate reading is take your screwdriver, insert it right down in here between the direct drum and the case on either side of the stator, and you want to pry rearward to get that drum and all the other guts as far back into the case as you possibly can. All right? You don't need to be crazy with it, but you want to make sure that nothing is forward. Everything has to be pushed to the rear. Then go ahead and zero out your indicator. Then take your screwdriver and you're going to just stick it in right here, okay, between the low reverse drum and the back of the sun shell, and then you're just going to pry forward like this. All right, so we'll go ahead and do that now, and we're going to take a reading. Okay, hold it. Everything now is as forward as it possibly can be. All right, we're zoomed in. Looks like we're at 35 thousandths. All right, back it off, get the drum and everything else back to its rearwardmost position. Okay, when you do this, the indicator should zero itself out. You shouldn't have to re-zero the indicator. If you do, then, I mean, no big deal. You just re-zero it, but that means you're probably going to need to take at least one more reading, because when it comes to these in-play checks, I like to have at minimum 2 consecutive readings, exactly the same measurement, where I feel good about, you know, how I did whatever I needed to do. All right. Now we'll do it again. Okay, 35 thousandths. All the guts are as forward as possible up against that thrust washer on the stator. So 35 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going on either side of the stator to force the direct drum and all the other guts back. So it looks like I'm returning to 1 thou below zero. Check your input shaft as well. All right, so now we're at zero. And everything is rearward, so we'll just do it one more time. If I get the same reading, then that's basically the reading that I'm going to write down. All right, 35 thousandths. So when I took this transmission apart, we had 44 thousandths of an inch. And I didn't change any hard parts inside this unit other than the pump gears. I mean, and they would have absolutely nothing to do with influencing front end play. So what that tells me is that there is some variability in these readings when the case is dry, assembled on the bench, and when it's working. So this is like assembled end play, and then you have working end play. Now, no one's going to go through the trouble of installing the transmission and taking it back out again shortly thereafter just to measure end play to see if it changed. At least not, you know, most normal people are not. If you're you know, developing selective thrust washers or pumps or whatever, then you might actually do that just to make sure that your you know, production process is sound, or you know, you flag anything that's unusual. But in the case of your transmission builder, do-it-yourself or whatever, that's going to measure this like this on the bench with the case assembled versus after it's installed in the vehicle, I mean, let's face it, you're not going to pull it out again just to measure end play to see if it changed. So we have to work with the assumption that there's going to be some delta in the end play after it goes back in. If that is the case, then with an initial reading of 35 thousandths and a reading that you know, you took beforehand, you know, was a 44 thousandths, either A, I didn't do something correct on my initial reading when we did the teardown inspection, or B, there is just literally working variability. So I've never gathered data on this, you know, little hypothesis of mine, and you know, I hope I'm wrong about it. To be honest, I don't like the idea of something changing that much, you know, like end play, for example, after a transmission gets installed and is working. But point being is that you want to make sure that you take all the care that you can when doing these measurements. And if I screwed up on the teardown inspection, which I'm hoping that's the case, then this reading is the legitimate reading, which would make more sense. It's closer to kind of in the middle versus being right on the you know, upper extreme of what's tolerable. And like I said, no hard parts were changed. Everything that came out of here went back in. Core was actually in good shape, and it was a working transmission. Actually, it wasn't really a core. It was, you know, customer's working transmission. He just wanted to refresh it, and good thing he did. If you watch that video, I mean, all of the applied elements were pretty much right on the edge of, you know, taking a dump on them. So anyway, this is how you measure end play, and you obviously saw the different thicknesses of selective washer. That is what you use to adjust the front end play if you're not within spec. So spec is 8 to 44 thousandths of an inch. And again, if this is going to be a high performance racing or very, very heavy duty transmission, I'd like to manage to generally between 20 and 30 thousandths. Okay, so this would be a little bit on the high side for a performance deal. I would find another thrust washer or maybe a shim that I can stick underneath, I don't know, something like 10 thousandths, and that would get me right where I want it to be. Alright, so with the pump out, I got the pump O-ring on, lubed up, ready to go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this 72 thou washer, and I'm going to install the 87 thousandths thick thrust washer that came in the kit. Lube it up a little bit. Just want to put enough on so that it stays in place, but I don't want too much on there because it could conceivably affect the reading. Alright, so 72 thou is going to come off, and our 87 thou washer is going to go on. So let me go ahead and reinstall the pump. We'll get the dial indicator set up again, and we'll take one final end play measurement. Like I said, 8 to 44 thou is the range we want to manage to. This should be anywhere from 15 to 20 thousandths tighter than where we were at initially with that 72 thou thick washer in there. All right, indicator's back on. We got that 87 thou thick washer in there. So let's give it a whirl and see what kind of reading we get. Looks like 18 thousandths. All right, reset everything. And it looks like we're not getting quite back to zero, so let me zero that out again. All right. Second attempt. Looks like 17 thousandths. All right, now I'm going to zoom in on the indicator so you can kind of see it in case you can't with the current angle. So let me do that, and then we will do one more. We do one more reading. All right, here goes. It's like 17 thousandths. Coming to rest at 16 thousandths. So 16 to 17 thousandths, I'm very comfortable with that. For a stock application, that's perfectly fine. Even if there's a high performance deal, like we were doing, I don't know, mud bogging in a 4x4 application or serious off-road use, this would be perfectly fine. I don't like it too tight. Like if it was, say, 10 thou or less, then I would probably put a different washer in there, or I'd have to put that one back in, that 72 thou thick washer, and try to shim it or something. But we don't have to cross that bridge, thankfully. We're good to go as is. So that's how you set up and adjust for front end play in a Ford C6. Incidentally, there's nothing else in the rear of the case that would thrust against all the other guts. So unlike many other transmissions, you don't have to take any kind of rear end play reading or worrying about something else potentially binding or interfering, or have to net some other measurement out. I mean, you just measure it in the front and that's it. And you just, mix and match and swap washers until you get into that 8 to 44 thou range that you need to be. All right, if you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave below. As always, thank you so much for watching. If there's anything else about the C6, please post it in the comments that you'd want to learn more about, or, a specific aspect of these transmissions that you would like to see a video on, and I will try to accommodate as best as I can, as soon as I can. So otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thanks again.